Okay, guys, here's a little more information. I'm going to do 8.3 and 8.4 together because 8.3 is pretty short. Causes and effects of the Red Scare. So there are two Red Scares. Remember, we did one after World War I, following the Russian Revolution or Bolshevik Revolution. There was a Red Scare in the United States. We did that bot activity. I don't know if you remember it. Another fun activity, which we didn't get to do, but so it is what it is. So this guy right here, this photograph is of Senator McCarthy and Joseph McCarthy, and he was really pivotal in trying to find communists within the American government. And he basically went on a tear where uh, he said a lot of senators and other Americans were communists. He got a lot of attention to these people, negative attention, of course. Um, Interestingly enough, Richard Nixon was a young congressman from California at the time, and he came to national prominence through these hearings, through the HUAC committee hearings. And so that's how he got to national prominence as a young congressman at this time. I included this little clip here. It's from history.com, and it's not really a video, but there is a historian talking. So I would recommend taking a look at that. All right, and then one of the big effects of this fear of communism at this time was a restriction on immigration. So if you notice here, we're in the years the 1950s, 41 through 60, I guess, just right following World War II. It's pretty low. It is going to increase as the years go on, but this whole Cold War time is pretty low. And it was very significant to have someone out you as a communist. That was a very bad thing if that happened to you. All right, topic 8.4 is the economic growth in the years after World War II. And this was a time of prosperity in many cases for many Americans. In part, it was through the GI Bill, which this guy over here is pointing to on the left. So all those soldiers who fought in World War II, a lot of them had left as young adults in their late teen years. When they returned, they could go to college through this funding known as the GI Bill. So they could do that. And they also could buy homes for low interest rates. So this was a really important thing. It allowed a lot of Americans to move out into the suburbs. You can see on the right-hand side here, we've got Levittown, 1957. Basically, they're going to build, a couple models of homes and have this suburban sprawl. Not unlike what we see today. If you look at those houses right by the high school, right there, those all are, 3 or 4 different models of homes, and you pick one and that's the one you get, and they build them rather quickly within 6 months or so. So the GI Bill is going to kind of push forward this middle class suburb dream, I guess you could say. Also, other things, we've got the advent of technology, of course, the things that go into your home that make your life easier as a housewife. A lot of the women are going to leave their factory work that they'd done in World War II and return back to the home. We're going to have this kind of idealized vision of the American family in the 1950s. You're going to see an increase of consumer products. Again, kind of we saw that resurge after World War I. We're going to see it again after World War II. And then Mel's Drive-In, cars are going to be huge in the 1950s. Some of the coolest cars come from that era. Remember, during World War II, consumer goods were non-existent, or at least brand new ones in stores, because the entire American industrial system had been turned over to making items needed for war. So we're kind of seeing that a little bit today, with this global pandemic against the coronavirus, where we're seeing, for example, GM switching their factories over to make ventilators right now instead of cars. We're seeing 3M instead of making items like Velcro and other kinds of things that we might use in our homes, they're making things like masks for healthcare workers. So, we're seeing that kind of happen today at a lower level, but go ahead and try to find a car built between 1941 and 1945, an American-made car. Very, very few of those are going to exist. But following the war, it's just going to have a resurgence of kind of the American cultural identity. Another big aspect of this time period is this movement, this migration we're going to see to this, what's known as the Sun Belt region. The Sun Belt region, one big reason why people are going to move there is because air conditioners are going to be available for people to purchase and have in their homes. So now you can live comfortably in these states, in these southern states, and have those air conditioning systems. So it's kind of interesting how technology can drive migration. But a big effect of this is the changes to Congress. So 2020, right now, we are in a census taking cycle. Ask your parents, have they done their census yet? We are required to do that every 10 years by the Constitution. And what happens is in 3 years, they're going to have the U.S. House of Representative seats reapportioned. So in 2023, we're going to see a shift. There's some talk California will lose a representative, which also plays out into presidential elections with how many electors we get. So I did put on here to the 270 to Win, my favorite website, and you can just see this impact following the move to the Sun Belt. We've got between 48 and 52, California gaining 7 electors, which are going to be 7 additional representatives as well into Congress. So those have huge, huge impacts on how people in these states are living. Additional reasons for the migration is going to be as the space race heats up, you are going to see more of those companies moving into the South. You're going to see this in large numbers in the 60s when Lyndon Johnson becomes president. This is going to be one way in which he's going to try to desegregate some of these southern cities, is by putting federal agencies, federal companies in the South, where federal laws are going to be against segregating those areas of employment. So that was one of LBJ, one of his kind of backdoor ways of trying to desegregate the South. Okay, 5 I want to do as well. I forgot, sorry, at the beginning, but mass culture. So I put on here 2 videos. I love these videos. I've shown them for years. They're just so funny. So the one on the left is traditional 1950s culture. It's so ridiculous and funny, but this is kind of how it was. And then over on the right is what's known as Bert the Turtle, or Duck and Cover. And this was a cartoon, and it would be played, for kids. It was made for kids on what to do in case of a nuclear war. So again, kind of silly, but these kinds of things kind of perpetuated this culture and this American culture of the 1950s. On the opposite side, we have challenges especially to the stereotype. So on the left, we've got one of the most famous movies at the time, James Dean. He in this Rebel Without a Cause. I usually show kids an excerpt of it, but I'm not going to have you guys do that now. But it's just kind of funny. James Dean was definitely a rebel. He was killed in a car accident down by Bakersfield, driving his Porsche way too fast. And then, of course, we've got Elvis Presley. Is very controversial at the time for his dance moves. A lot of shows, they would only show him from the waist up because it was too, it's just too much of a challenge to the stereotype of the day. And then Grease is a movie made after the 1950s, but early on you see Sandy and how she's portrayed. That's kind of 1950s. And then, of course, John Travolta's character, I'm forgetting his name, he is the rebel during this time. So I just put the trailer on there for fun. And then there's another clip if you want to check that out. I think it's worth your time. Okay, and then what is known as the Beat movement, I should have capitalized that, it's going to represent the most direct rejection of mainstream 1950s cultural norm. One of the most popular Beat authors was a guy named Jack Kerouac, and one of his novel was On the Road. Again, sometimes I have kids read an excerpt of this, but we won't do that this year. I just put some quotes on here for it. The Beats were really popular in the San Francisco Bay Area, and definitely kind of going against the cultural norms of the 1950s, just totally rejecting that. And then we're going to come back to this group here, but I wanted to throw it out here too. The SDS, or Students for Democratic Society, was the most influential group in organizing large-scale protests. They're going to really escalate in the 60s with the Vietnam War. But I like this flag right here, this flyer. It shows you kind of some of the things that they're fighting for. And, students are very amazing in their ability to organize. Organization, we've talked about this before. It's not easy to do. And the students across college campuses were able to really find an amazing way to do that and to unify under these kind of ideas. It's really amazing when you think there's no social media at the time, right? So they're writing letters, publishing newspaper articles, making phone calls, and that's how they're organizing at the time. So we'll come back to that. Okay. And that's where we're going to stop then for those 3 topics. And just make sure you bring any questions you might have, and we'll try to answer them as we go. All right.